Hi, and congratulations on completing week 4 and moving past the halfway point in the course. And welcome to week 5, Interpreting Historiography. Before we get into this week's lecture, or this week's introduction, I want to just make a quick note that week 6 is the week of Thanksgiving. And many of us are going to be traveling, visiting family, getting ready for Christmas. And I want you to be able to enjoy that as much as possible. Therefore, I encourage you to get started on week 6 early so that you're not under the gun on the last day before the assignments are due. So if it were me, I would finish week 5 and get the reading completed for week 6, and maybe even on Monday get any assignments out of the way that I can. Therefore, as you move into Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which I know are high family times and high travel days, you can be as far ahead as possible. So, moving to week 5, interpreting historiography. This week we have 3 goals. We're going to demonstrate an understanding of the basic literary features of the historical books. We're also going to observe key literary features of historiography in the Book of Ruth. So just like last week, we did a chart analyzing some of the features of narrative in Ruth. This week we're going to dive in and look at characterization a little more different, or a little more in depth. And then finally to explain how literary features contribute to the meaning of the Book of Ruth. So in assignment 5.1, we're doing a character study. And I want you to write a 3-page in-depth character study of one of the characters of Ruth. So in your chart, you did a brief overview of all the characters in Ruth. Now I want you to pick one and really dive deep. I want you to evaluate the author's rendering of the character you choose in the text and answer the following questions. And on the next couple of slides, we have several questions. First, how do they contribute to the overarching plot of the narrative? So look at Ruth, or whatever character, but look at the character in Ruth, and look at how that character impacts the flow of the entire book. How did the author create and give us information about that character to support the goal of the book? And so you almost want to back up and say, okay, what is Ruth about? What is the author of Ruth being inspired trying to tell us that we can take away? And then look at each character and how do they weave together to create an understanding that the author has tried to portray. So how do they contribute to the overarching plot of the narrative? 2, how are they static or dynamic characters? So how are they being developed? Do we understand what they think? Do we know what they look like? What does the author feel important enough for us to know? And are they agents or are they fully developed characters? 3, what is their interaction like with other characters, both through dialogue, action, and so forth in the narrative? And that includes God. What is their interaction with God? 4, how is the author's presentation of them supposed to impact the reader? I.e., what is the thrust of the application of this text for our Old Testament and New Testament believer? And so I'm asking you here to say, okay, now I understand the goal of the book of Ruth. How is that borne out through the rest of the Old Testament and into the New Testament? In week 4, you did a word study on the word redeem or redeemer. Well, how is that theme, which I believe is a central theme in the book of Ruth, is that Ruth is being redeemed? There are lots of other themes that can be pulled out, but that's one. And if you look at being redeemed, is there a New Testament link that uses that same context for all Christians? And obviously, I think there is. Note, you will need to cite sources in this paper. So I am looking for biblical support. I am looking for support from your primary textbooks, and I'm looking for outside academic research. So include at least 2 citations of reputable and recent academic resources per page. That means if it's a 6-page paper, we're looking for at least 6 citations and sources. And an academic source is a published book, a commentary, a journal, but it also can include, and down below, Wikipedia and a lot of other websites are not included. But where it says recent academic resources, we're looking for, and I'm looking for, works that are done in the last 30 years. If you go back too far, it is in fact dated and would need to be updated with a more recent source. So stay within the last 30 years of scholarship for the paper. So you want that per page. Obviously, class readings are excellent resources for this paper, but other reputable sources may be utilized as well, and in my case are highly encouraged. Please note that unpublished online resources are not considered academically credible. That includes Wikipedia and multiple other online blog type sources. Biblical citations are necessary for this paper, but they do not count towards your 2 citations per page requirement. So as I've been looking for all semester, this is the same type of thing I'm looking for here. I want outside research, I want engagement with the reading, and I want engagement with biblical citations. Then for assignment 5.2, so we have 2 written assignments, 1 discussion post. Assignment 5.2, interpretive method. In a 500-word blog, defend a position on diachronic versus synchronic methods for interpreting narrative texts. Evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of each position from your own faith perspective. So diachronic methods, synchronic methods, across time, not across time. And so want you to identify and define these terms. Your textbook is going to help you with that. And then evaluate the strengths of each position within your own faith perspective. What is at stake for you between these 2 methods? And how do you respond as a believer to the critical challenges in certain texts? And then finally, weigh and critique Chisholm's proposed 3rd way methodology. So for this 500-word blog, we're looking at you to take 3 different discussions. What is diachronic? What is synchronic? What is the 3rd way? And I want you to use both the assigned reading and outside research and biblical support to support your positions, and then argue for which one you believe is correct. So that's going to be probably 5 paragraphs, an introduction, 3 content, one paragraph for each method, and a conclusion arguing which one you think is correct. On the discussion post this week, using Logos, which is a required program for this class, using Logos, look up and examine the most frequently repeated words throughout the book of Ruth. So you're going to be looking at Ruth, and this is actually an excellent way to examine different books, is to see which words are being repeated the most. And so I want you to do that for Ruth, to see which words are the most important to the author and what the author ends up saying over and over again. You may do this most easily by using the passage guide interesting words function within Logos. So which words stand out to you? Study how these are used and how often. Then pick one and defend a position on how the repetition of this word contributes to the overall message of the book. So it's like doing a word study, but instead of me giving you a word, this time you're looking at the book and choosing a word to do further study. You might say, well, we just did that last week. I'm going to pick that word, and Goel is not allowed for this assignment, even though it is a common word. So, quick note, remember next week, week 6, is Thanksgiving week. Get a head start so you don't find yourself behind the 8 ball on week 6 assignments. Email or call me with any questions. I'm also traveling for Thanksgiving, and so at the end of this week, I'll be heading from Antigua back to Raleigh, where I'll spend Thanksgiving week. But I should be available by phone or by email most of the time unless I'm on an airplane. So have a great week. I look forward to reading your assignments. Ruth is a fantastic book, and I look forward to hearing what you guys find as you do a further study into the book of Ruth. Have a great week.